Hello, everyone. Welcome to our sixth Air Quality Forum. My name is Johanna Angeline. I will be your moderator for today, as usual. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm so happy to see each and every one of you, and I also see some familiar faces as well. I'm super excited because it's going to be an interesting discussion, especially with our speaker today. Today's forum, our speaker for today is Weenarin Lulitanonda. She's a co-founder of the Thailand Clean Air Network. So a bit of introduction. Weena is one of the co-founders of the Thailand Clean Air Network, or Thailand CAN. It's a citizen-driven nonprofit group that includes professionals from multidisciplinary fields to support policy solutions to the air pollution crisis in Thailand. So Thailand CAN has developed the first citizen-driven clean air bill, which has been submitted to the Thailand Parliament and is one of the draft legislation currently being considered as for passage into law. And a bit of background as well. Weena is also a senior consultant with the World Bank Group in the area of private sector development and corporate governance. She held a master's in applied economics and an undergraduate degree in economics. Her master was in the University of Michigan, and her undergraduate degree was in economics and finance was in Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. So, as interested as I am, I wanted to let Weena to have the stage. Hi, Weena. So, without further ado, I wanted to invite you and start presenting. The stage is yours.
Great. Hi, Joanna. Thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Great. Let me just quickly share screen. You see that okay? Okay, great. Okay. Whoops. First of all, thank you everybody for making the time to listen to this webinar. Let me just so it's this presentation I'm going to do is called "Together We Can Make Air Breathable Again." Let me start off by explaining who we are. As Yolanda had kindly mentioned, our group is called the Thailand Clean Air Network. What, as you can see from this presentation, our strategic positioning is that we have a long-term focus and a comprehensive, holistic view of the situation. We are a multidisciplinary group. So we are cross-cutting in terms of the fields of study in terms of our background and also our various institutional affiliation. And we adopt a bottom-up design, which means that we are very, very much a believer of a bottom-up approach that is inclusive of all stakeholders. Oopsies. Okay. In terms of our conceptual framework, what we have in our group is we have expertise in many different fields. That includes people with the legal background, people with public health background, air pollution scientists, obviously, and economists, and many, many others. The way we galvanize is we use the knowledge that we have together with provision of tools and knowledge, as well as and use mass communication to be able to provide that information out and to the mass, to people, in order to, and we also develop and sustain a lot of strategic partnerships. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is to protect the right of everyone to breathe clean air. I mentioned that we work with a lot of strategic partners. So we have an open and expanding network. And as you can see from this slide presentation, this is the logo of all the various partners who we are working with. They're actually more than this. There are some specific partners who, because of their internal policies or whatever, prefer not to have their logo shown. But this is just some of them. And as you see at the bottom, actually, which is quite interesting, our partners also include a lot of cafes, restaurants, and places like that. And there's a specific reason for it. Because we are a citizen-led group, we actually have to collect a lot of signatures. And we did it all through COVID. Now, during COVID, where no one wants you to actually go near them, and we actually had to do it by approaching people with a specific form and asking for a copy of the national ID on paper. And so it's extremely difficult for us to do. And what we ended up doing was we came up with the idea of having people volunteer to become clean air stations for us. And a number of cafes and places like that actually did. So they are our strategic partners in all of this. And we also work with groups like, for example, the World Resource Institute, the obviously AirGradient is our strategic partners, Thai Consumer Council, BioThai, which is another foundation, IQ Air is another company that we collaborate with, Palo IT, which is a B Corp that does a lot of IT work. So our network is quite varied and wide, and it includes international as well as domestic groups. Okay, the next section is what is it that we're working on, and let me just do this. So here's a picture of what Bangkok looks like, right? So on the left, it's a normal blue sky day in Bangkok. And on the right is during an air pollution episode. That's what the same skyline looks like. Now, Chiang Mai, which some of you may be aware of, it's one of our top tourist destinations up in northern Thailand. To the left is what a normal day that's not within an air pollution episode in Chiang Mai looks like. And to the right, it's the exact same scene when air pollution gets really bad. This shows actually data from 2011 until this year, but this year is only collected up to June. For every month of the year, for 12 months, color coding the air quality day by day. So as you can see, the data was only starting to be collected only 2011 onwards. So as you can see, basically, if you eyeball it, basically from January all the way to April and sometimes all the way out to mid-May or a bit longer, 4 or 5 months in the year, actually Chiang Mai has bad air quality. As you see, some years it gets purple, right? Whoops. So in the first quarter of last year, there was a headline news that came on The Nation, which is one of the English language newspaper here in Thailand, that air pollution was a cause that had made 1.3 million Thais sick. There are 17 million people residing in Thailand, right? So 1.3 million that's not a small number. And the air pollution varies by region. So look, this is data from actually the University of Chicago. The air quality, they developed the air quality life index, and they actually did a fact sheet for Thailand. And this is based on data from there. And as you can see, actually, the top line up there is actually northern Thailand, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it should be northern Thailand. So that's the region with the highest, in terms of average PM2.5 concentration levels. And then the best region is actually southern Thailand. But on average, it's not so great, right? And what the University of Chicago, the Air Quality Life Index team actually also did was they did they calculated, as a lot of you are probably familiar with, is the potential gain in life expectancy if Thai government had actually adopted air quality levels that align with the WHO recommended guidelines. And they looked at the provinces based on population rated. And so in terms of life expectancy, on average, Thai citizens and residents they are having about 1.8 years cut off from their life. And it varies by region. So if you live up in Chiang Mai, it looks like it's around 2.5 years, right? If you're in Bangkok, Bangkok sits at around about 1.5. It's close to the average, so it's not great. And based on data out in 2000 and just the data in 2021, they actually ranked how Thailand stacks up against the other Southeast Asian countries. And among the 10 Southeast Asian countries, we are the fourth worst, right, in terms of PM 2.5 concentration levels. We have a environmental economist in our group, and one of the work that he has done is he's calculated the social cost of air pollution in Thailand. Basically, what he does is actually goes out and surveys people and asks them, like, how much would you actually pay to be in a clean air space, right? And so people, in terms of quantification of how much you're paying for air purifier, how much you would, and, you know, for your math and things like that. So it's a subjective well-being analysis that he did. And on the basis of that data, using 2019 data, the social cost of air pollution in Thailand is 1.7 billion trillion baht, which is about around 10% of GDP. The World Bank has actually calculated the economic cost of air pollution in Thailand, and this was actually released in December of last year. And they calculated the health cost, as well as costs that have come about because of, reduction in tourism and productivity, because of air quality issues in Thailand. And they've calculated that the total cost is around 6% of GDP, which is massive. It's not a small thing. Okay, so the $1 million question, what is the cause of air pollution? Why are we having this problem? Now in Thailand, air pollution is actually what I would call a year-round festivity. So this is a depiction of the months in the year that air quality is bad. So up north, as you saw before, it's like February to April. Some years it starts in January and stretches out to May, right? So we're talking about at least 4 to 5 months where air quality is not okay. And that's pretty much the case in northeastern Thailand now too. If you are in central part of the country, which includes Bangkok, the air pollution episode here normally starts from around December and it goes up to February. Sometimes it stretches out to March. If you're in the southern part of Thailand, June to October is usually not a great time, and part of it is linked to a large part of it is actually right now linked to transboundary issues coming through from on the Indonesian side. So, the countries here are quite close to each other. Okay, sources of air pollution. There are actually 5 sources of air pollution in Thailand. So you've got agricultural and forest fires, vehicle pollution, you've got industrial pollution, and that includes energy sector, includes waste management, the whole gamut. You've got transboundary haze issues, and you've got urbanization. On this slide, you'll actually see that there's no percentages, and that's because the data in Thailand is not that definitive that you can be so accurate in how much each source is actually contributing. You've got a rough sense, but and part of it is that specifically with industrial pollution, don't have emissions inventory data. And so that is actually a missing part of it, which is quite important. And the data is not so clean here, so it's really hard to be that definitive about the percentage. And that's why we don't actually state it. Let me give you a pretext of this problem. And it all in Thailand, the issue actually is linked to a much bigger issue globally, which is the shift in global production. So it's a bit of what you might have heard, the saying, not in my backyard. So this is data that was pulled from the State of Global Air Report in 2022. And from this picture, you can see, well, it's a bit stark when you look at it. And pretty much, if you look, the air quality in the global north is meeting WHO guidelines, pretty much, right? Once you go to the global south, the picture is very, very different, right? And don't forget, a lot of you are probably aware of this, but it's pretty much linked to how global production bases have shifted. So particularly here in Asia, when China entered the WHO in early 90s, a lot of the production bases that were particularly in the global north has shifted here into Asia, which makes sense from a business perspective, right? Because this is the world's most populous region in the world. So what is better than putting the production bases right next to your biggest consumers, right? Don't forget the density in this part of the world is really bad because we're so populous. Now in Thailand, there's another very specific problem, and that's linked to what's called the agro-industry sector and linked to biomass burning. And I know that's also an issue in a lot of other developing countries as well. Thailand is the world's #1 animal feed producer, and the source of that animal feed is actually corn. So we're actually the world's biggest, right? And looking at the top feed companies in the world, and it's forecasted to grow exponentially. And that's one major source of a lot of burning. And this was really problematic because corn is not just grown on the flatlands, they're grown on very hilly, steep mountain terrains, and not only in Thailand, but in neighboring countries as well. The second source in terms of the culprit crops that is linked to biomass burning in Thailand is sugar. So we rank quite high. We're like the third or fourth largest sugar producer in the world. So sugarcane, that's another massive crop that's grown in this country, and the amount of burning of the sugarcane fields is very, very intense, and the time period is very intense. Actually, we're heading up to it quite soon now because they're going to start doing it around the end of the year, and it usually goes all the way out to around March or so, and a lot of it happens in the central part of the region, and then northeastern Thailand as well. And that's one major cause of air pollution from the agro industry. And then the third one is actually rice. So within the top 10 producing countries in the world, Thailand is way up there. We actually used to be higher. Rice is a major source of a lot of burning of the rice fields, after post-harvesting. And I also mentioned about industrial pollution, and I call it the black box. Out of we have about 67 industrial parks in all of Thailand. Now, around 2/3 of those are within provinces next to Bangkok. And here to the right, you can see that this is actually the Gulf of Thailand. This is where Bangkok is. So this is the yellow part of it. Currently on what we call the eastern seaboard here, there's tons and tons of factories right now, and it's being developed a lot more. And the problem I mentioned before is there's no emissions inventory data in Thailand. So you don't actually know what's actually coming out of the smokestack, which is really problematic. And the picture doesn't look good in terms of industrial pollution because there is, based on the economic development plans that are on the books, there's plans to actually develop some part of the country. Remember before I was saying that right now, the best region in terms of air quality, except only in certain months when there's problem with transboundary haze, is southern Thailand. Okay. Now, the plans are to develop southern Thailand to become a real hotbed for a lot more industrial pollution. So to the right, I know the titling is in Thai. As you can see, just graphically see, those are all the factories that are being planned. And this is all of southern Thailand. So it's not looking so great. What we did was we worked with the Circular Design Lab, which is another volunteer group active here in Bangkok. And what we did was amongst a group of active citizens, expats and Thais, we did a mapping of what are the causes of air pollution in Thailand, different things, so talking about awareness and lack of awareness, engagement, education, financial reasons, environment, social, economic, eco-demographic reasons, culture, information, politics, so of all the things, right? When we did a survey amongst people within the group, the issues that came up is that environmental issues, environmental subjects are actually not taught in schools in Thailand. Air pollution is invisible, so it makes it extremely hard to build that awareness. Lack of citizenship that's not taught in schools and not propagated throughout the population. And some people also talked about lack of free speech being an impediment. So really, the air pollution problem is, I would say, a real tip of the iceberg kind of issue. It's a problem of structural problem and a cultural violence problem. And there's a lot more that you don't see. So when you take the iceberg model, what you see above the water surface level is direct violence, right? So as I say, Thais are currently dying prematurely by about an average of 1.8 years because of air pollution problems, right? Best quarter of last year, 1.3 million Thais were sick because of air pollution, right? So that you can actually see. But the invisible thing that people don't talk about are the structural and cultural violence that underpins this. So examples of structural violence is, people don't understand that they have a right to clean air, and they don't get that right to clean air. Well, they don't get it at a very visual level that actually the right to clean air is actually right to life, to your very life, right? So that's missing. There's also a belief sort of tied to very fatalistic when you talk about laws, because they're very cynical about implementation issues, and that's there's reasons for it, but it shouldn't stop you from moving ahead on something that's needed, so important, like the lack of having actually clean air legislation in this country. There's also an issue related to an economic problem too, because Thailand has has problems in terms of inequality. The disparity between the super rich and people who are lower on the socioeconomic strata it's very big here in this country. And so there's a problem because a lot of the burning, particularly in the agro industry, is linked to farmers who are part of the contract farming arrangements. And there is no alternative right now for them. I mean, they always ask you the same question, like, what is a cheap alternative than a matchstick to manage, the biomass that comes out, the bio waste that's coming out of the fields that they need to clear out, or, how do they get in quickly to, in the case of, for example, sugarcane, to try to get in and deal with the leaves, and be able to harvest the sugarcane fast enough so they can bring it to the factories in time. What is cheaper, what's alternative that makes sense for them. And then the lack of understanding that right now, if you don't manage this problem, what we have in this country is actually the taxpayer paying for all of this. And so we're not using polluter pay principle right now. All of us who pay taxes are actually paying for it. The cultural violence is a sort of a sense of belief, of sort of ignorance of bliss, a kind of happy-go-lucky kind of mindset, which is good and bad, right? It's also a belief of who you know is more important than what you know, right? So a belief that, if you have the right connections, things kind of happen for you. It's a fatalistic sense that as ordinary citizens, your voice doesn't really matter. And then it's kind of a misplaced belief that the state is actually fully in charge of this and they can handle it unilaterally, which has been proven time and time again. And that's not the case. Okay. So how will we get to a clean air future, and what have we been doing to achieve this, right? So let me walk you through what our group has done. When we looked into this, Thailand doesn't have a clean air legislation, right? And unless you have the rules of engagement clearly set out, there's no way you can actually manage this. Cannot be the be-all and all solution, but without it, there's no chance of ever achieving clean air. So what we did was we've got a pretty solid group of lawyers in our team. Very, very fortunate to have that. Environmental lawyers, human rights lawyers, financial lawyers, many, many fields, public sector lawyers. And what we did was then we looked into this, they're highly experienced, and we looked at the process that we believe is one of the very good process in terms of pushing for legislation, and that's the EU process. So the EU consultative and legislative process is very airtight, and we basically adopted the same thing. So what we did starting in 2019 was we developed the Clean Air White Paper, and that pretty much walks through the broader issues of what underpins air pollution situation here in Thailand. Then out in 2020, during COVID, we developed the Blue Paper, and that's the Blue Paper, the Clean Air Blue Paper gets into the impact of air pollution. And what we did to develop the Blue Paper was actually we went out and spoke to a lot of stakeholders and solicited their inputs in this. And the final one, which is the Clean Air Green Paper, and that was completed in 2022. Now, this is the solutions-based paper, right? This, you can't tell because I've only put in the cover here to show you. The Clean Air Green paper is almost 800 pages in length, right? So we walk through sectorially all the sectors that impact air pollution. So we have a chapter on agricultural sector, we have a chapter on forest fire, we have a chapter on transboundary haze, we have a chapter on vehicle pollution, we have a chapter on urbanization. We also have a chapter on the mining sector, extractive industry mining sector. We have a chapter on the industrial sector. We have a chapter on energy sector, and we have a chapter on waste management. Then we also have sectors that relate to the three major stakeholders that have impact on air quality. So one is the government. What is the role and responsibility of the government to resolve this issue? Second one is the roles and responsibility of civil society. Granted, we're very cognizant of the type of civil society. Citizens are actually victims, but also what can civil society do collectively to achieve clean air? The third stakeholder is the private sector and the banking sector and financial sector. What are the roles and responsibility of the private sector and the banking and financial sector in resolving this problem? And then we've got a synthesis and analysis solution to all of this. Now, in each chapter, it's very multidisciplinary because in each chapter, we actually have solution that comes from a legal solution for all the sectors. We also have a solution from an economic standpoint, and we also have solutions for what civil society can do, right, to push some of these way forward. Now, all three of that is the underpinning of the citizen-led clean air legislation, the bill that we've actually tabled. So now what happened then was we then actually translated, then we developed the citizen-led clean air bill, and we had a volunteer help us translate it to English. And we sent a copy to Dr. David Ball, who a lot of you may be familiar with. Dr. Ball is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment. And he kindly reviewed it, and he gave us his endorsement and sent a video to the Thai government, actually. Just walking you through sort of some of the key milestones. So we formally formed as a group in 2019. About we're 6 or 7 years into this now. So that was when we started up. By 2020 was when we started the actually getting the go ahead to disseminate the draft Citizen-led Clean Air Act for citizens to actually submit their signatures to support it, right? So by early 2022, we went to the government. We had over 22,000 signatures. And with that, we were able to submit this to Parliament. Actually, the watermark requirement in Thailand, according to Constitution, is 10,000. So we got more than double that. So by 2022 and 2023, nothing happened. It's 2 years of just absolute silence. So every now and then, we go up to the Thai government and say, hey, what's happening? So there's a couple of pictures of what we do, and there's a lot of awareness building that we were been working on throughout all of this. Finally, in January of this year, there were 6 other bills that came in as well. And so what happened was that in the first session, all 7 clean air bills was put forward to the floor, and it was unanimously voted to be passed for deliberation. Okay, so what are the 7 bills? So this is us with the legislation here. Our mascot, as we say, is actually a nose, symbolize the fact that that's what all of us have in common on this issue. And the others are the cabinet draft. This is our previous prime minister. And there are drafts from other political parties that make up the current government administration, as well as these 2 parties are They were part of the opposition at the time. So right now there is an ad hoc committee that's been set up, right? It's a really big committee, actually. It's 39 of us. It's very massive. As the only citizen legislation that was tabled, we are given a position of an allocation that we would get 1/3 of the seat of this ad hoc committee. So we make up 13 members of this committee. And with the opposition party, they have 6 and 1. So in total, combined, we actually make up 51%, a little bit over 51% of this committee that's reviewing the final clean air bill that will go back to Parliament for final deliberation. The other 48% are the cabinet and the government. They make up the current coalition. So to explain what we're trying to do in a short NEMI, I think you guys would have seen this before, right? So it's either you keep the status quo, which is you do nothing, you don't change the structure of anything, and you keep things as is, which is what the little macro at the left represents, or you deal with a much bigger structural problem, and that's what we are trying to do. Because if you don't touch this problem will never end, right? Just walking through just some of the key features of this citizen-led Thai Clean Air bill that we tabled. So one of the first key feature is to try to improve the effectiveness of law engagement. And the second really important feature is that we are a strong advocate for co-management. And this is co-management between the state and civil society, because a lot of the knowledge and the skills and the know-how is within subject expert matters within civil society. Actually, if you all take off I have, we're all part of civil society, right? Our legislation, the third feature is that it's a rights-based legislation. And so it underpins the fact that this is extremely important. And it's on the basis that we're trying to protect the right of every citizen to breathe clean air. And when you create that right, you create an equal obligation of the state to protect that right. And it's very critical that this is protected, because if you don't have this, when it goes to going into in a court case, as a citizen who's impacted by air pollution, your case in front of the courts is much weaker if the right to clean air is not endorsed in legislation. This is critical. We focus on health and the environment. There's no other legislation in Thailand that does this, because it's either a health-focused thing or it's an environment thing. And what we're trying to say is, look, you can never have good health in a terrible environment. And so these two elements is absolutely critical. We also try to bring a systemic integration. Right now, a lot of the way things operate, the various state agencies and bodies are working in silos, right? And this is a cross-ministerial issue. This air quality issue cuts across every ministry, and it's very difficult. And without that integration, it's very, very hard to really manage the situation. The sixth feature of it is we try to cater to localized solutions. So we're not trying to do a one-size-fits-all, because the sources of air pollution varies between region. There are nuances between each the different stakeholders. So getting solutions from the ground to address is critically important. The seventh feature, which is important to make this all happen, you can't manage this if you don't have money, right? And you don't create the right incentives. So one of the important ethos of solid environmental legislation is not a top-down approach, right? Not a sanctions-only approach. That is not effective, has proven not to be effective on its own. So what we have both what we call carrots and sticks, right? So carrots is economic incentives together with penalties. So creating the right incentives, and if anybody doesn't abide by it at a certain level, you need to actually penalize them for it. And that's what we do. And then the eighth part, which is the tricky part, is actually managing the transboundary haze, because now it's outside our jurisdiction. But the way we've been doing it here is actually shifting the burden of proof back to the polluter. So those are sort of the key main features of this legislation. Now, having understood the fact that the legislative track was really, really important, we also are very cognizant that you're not going to go very far if you don't have a social movement that goes hand in hand, right? Because you can have the best legislation out there, but if people don't understand that this is something that's about them, they don't understand how important it is, and they're not making the right noise collectively, the chances of getting legislation that is effective then actually really, really manages and addresses the root cause of this problem is very difficult, because we believe and we know that you'll never get political will if that public will is not there to push political will in the first place. And that's what the social movement is important for, right? So this is the sort of steps toward creating the social movement needed. So the first very basic step is you need to acknowledge the problem. You need to then want to understand and learn more about it. Then you have awareness about the situation. The fourth step is then you want to exercise the right. And then the very top level is you would want to demand legislative change. And that's what we're trying to move people up towards. So we've done a lot of social events, public educational events. We've done a lot of talks. We've used arts. We've worked with influencers. This is actually the picture from our very first International Clean Air Day that we did. I think it must have been about 4 years ago now. Every year we've been doing it. This was the photo for the event that we did last year, where we actually did it at one of the top universities, Chulalongkorn University Law Faculty. One of my co-founder, who actually leads the actual drafting of the legislation, is from Chulalongkorn University. So we had a lot of people join in. Not just from Thailand, but also internationally. Dr. David Boyd joined us. We had people we had lawyers from Client Earth join us virtually as well. We had the World Resource Institute also join us as well. So it was a very engaging event. And we actually just a few weeks ago, we just held the International Clean Air Day event for this year. And this time we actually brought in quite an interesting mix. So to the top left, you can see we actually had panelists who are religious leaders to talk about, the linkage between environment and the law and spirituality, right? So we brought a representative from the Buddhist religion, a monk a monk. We actually had a Catholic priest and an imam come speak, right? We had medical doctors come speak. We had artists come join us. We had, and then we brought musicians in. We had a green market. So it was not just know-how, but also very engaging for people to attend as well. These are the pictures from a stakeholder consultation that we've had. We've spoken to low-income communities that have greatly impacted. We've spoken to schools. We also work quite closely with the labor unions, who are very affected as well, because, a lot of them actually work out in the elements where they don't have ways to actually manage themselves during an air pollution crisis or situation. We also work with political key opinion leaders. So we went to every political party and we asked them to actually send us a short video about what clean air means to them, not as a politician, but as an individual, as a mother, as a husband, as a son, right? What does clean air mean to you? And so they've sent us short clips, and the ones that have, we went to every political party, but only 4 sent us the clip. And so we've posted that up, because what we're going to say is the clean air agenda is something that needs to arise, need to be way above politics, right? It has to be above politics, and it has to be above business interests. I've gone through and been featured on mainstream media. We have social influencers and different people work with us through social media. We've worked to get some of our awareness campaigns on commuter trains here in Bangkok. We have worked with Plan B they own a lot of the, what they call it, out-of-home media, these big digital screens, and also across the country. And so we've worked with them. We developed the ads. these short campaign ads, and they've helped us be part of their sort of CSR campaign. We've also been on big billboards on the highways here as well in Bangkok. And we've worked with artists. So here, actually, we're fortunate enough that Brown University helped us provide funding. And I've worked with this amazing artist and created this snow sculpture. And we did this big exhibition last year. What we do is this is all created out of actually recycled material. And what we're trying to do with this is to convey that, we have 13 of these sculptures, right? Noses of different sizes. And what we're trying to convey is that the fact that the thing that unites all of us, no matter who you are, no matter where you work, is the fact that we all need to breathe. So it is this nose that we all have, and it is the entry point in which we breathe, right? And the nose is actually connected to a vacuum cleaner to signify the fact that the way things are, our bodies are like a vacuum cleaner, right? And at whatever, the pollutants are going straight in and into our body. It's actually worse than a vacuum cleaner, because in the vacuum cleaner, you actually get the dust out, right? But as a lot of something like PM 2.5, PM1, once it's in, you can't, it doesn't go away. We've also developed a documentary as well. So we've done this short documentary and collaborated with different partners and developed that. And these are shots from that documentary. We've developed public guides on air quality. This is the one that the medical doctor was another co-founder in my group has done through the Ministry of Public Health. We've done a guide for citizens to understand about their right to clean air. And we've done a summary guideline booklet on the clean air green paper, because the green, as I was telling you, it's almost 800 pages. So we did a summary version for people to understand what the solutions are. We work with strategic partners. So this is a children's book that one of our strategic partners has developed. It's an amazing children's story book talking about air pollution, particularly in northern Thailand, and its impact. And it's in dual language, and it's available on ebook as an ebook version as well. Beautiful, beautiful imagery in there. And another one of our strategic partners actually works in Chiang Mai University, phenomenal environmental engineer, who actually works with a lot of kids in different schools in Chiang Mai, and they formed together and actually did a song. And so we actually helped them in that process, and they released a demo a few months ago, and actually we invited them over here, and they were here to sing their song and to share their experiences here in Bangkok 2-3 weeks back. Okay, so in closing, what's our call to action? Well, right now, the 3 critical areas of contention on the Clean Air Act are 3 issues. The first one is protecting Thai citizens' right to breathe clean air. Yeah, that is one key area that's its point of contention. The second one, which is pretty big, is about restructuring the current state to have the right, the accurate, the roles and responsibility they need to have to actually bring about clean air. So as I was telling you, all the government agencies work in silo. There's no one that's actually fully responsible for air quality. We do have a unit called the Pollution Control Department, which is in the Ministry of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment is the ministry with the least amount of budget allocation amongst all, right? And then the Pollution Control Department gets a smaller allocation within that right now. And also the reality on the ground is whatever they do, because air quality issue is cross-ministerial, they have to work across ministerial bounds. So for example, if it's industrial pollution, they need to go work with their colleagues in another ministry to try to, close down, change, retrofit factories. Now don't remember, the Ministry of Industry, their KPI is based on how many factories are being built, how much FDI they bring into the country. It's not about air quality, right? So their objectives are not aligned in that respect. So that's just one source of air pollution. That's the case throughout. So what I'm trying to say is they don't actually have the responsibility and ability to work across the ministerial realm to do their work, right? So that's a big issue. And if you don't restructure the state in the right way to manage this, this is not going to happen. And then the third issue of major contention is on the financing part of it. As I was saying, that finance is a big element of all this. You can't do anything without having the funds to be able to manage it. And one critical element, which is in our citizen-led clean air bill, that is not in the others, is setting up a dedicated airport clean air fund for health, right? So, which needs to be funded by levies that is imposed on polluter that will finance a transition to a clean air future. So as you can imagine, polluters don't like to pay for the amount of pollution they're putting out there. So it's quite a space of contention. So right now, what we have is on our website, as I said, the formal stuff we've done already, right? But what we have on our website is a public petition. It's an informal public petition, but it's a way to channel our collective voice. So we are encouraging people to sign up, go to our website, all the material, everything we've developed is there for you to read, understand. We've got information to explain everything, short videos, long videos, interviews. We've got a lot of stuff there. And we're trying to get, right now, we've got close to 60,000 people that have signed up. We're trying to get to, our immediate goal is 100,000 people, but our stretch goal is actually 1 million. As I was saying before, there's 17 million people that live in Thailand. So I think 1 million is not too much to ask for. So that's our call to action. We really need a groundswell of public support to really win this fight for clean air. Yes, we are in the process of developing this, but will we have a legislation that really deals with it in the right way? Will it have the right bells and whistles? Will it actually get into dealing with the root causes? You won't know, right? It's a long process, and unless and until there's a groundswell of public support behind this, our chances of coming out with something that really works is not that great. So that's why our stretch goal is asking for 1 million supporters. And the other thing that we often get to ask by people is, okay, fine, I can sign up, but I want to get more involved. What can I do? We get that question a lot of times. It's a bit of a difficult one to really answer, right? Because this issue is so massive. And so I was looking at a quote that says, those who can do. Those who can do more, volunteer. And I'm just showing you a very, very basic example of what I mean. What you see here is actually the citizen-led clean air bill. The left, I know it's in Thai, it's hard to tell, but on the left part, that is the cover for our citizen-led clean air bill. We also created a record of intent that explains the underpinning behind every single clause that we've put out in there. And that's the book you see on the right-hand side. So the cover for both was actually designed by a phenomenal lady. Her name is Anna. Anna is based in Lisbon. She's a Portuguese book cover designer. And through the RSA, she heard about our group and she reached out and she volunteered her time and she developed the cover for this. So the cover for the citizen-led clean air bill is actually developed by a Portuguese lady. It's just phenomenal. The other thing is we also have a Thai volunteer who actually unilaterally took on by himself to translate the entire citizen-led clean air bill into English for us. And that was just absolutely phenomenal. And with his work, we actually worked with an actual lawyer to actually refine his translation, and that's how we were even able to show the world, this is what we've developed here in Thailand. So those are example of things that can be involved. So let me just end really quickly. There's a Carl Sagan quote that says, anything else you're going to do or interested in is not going to happen. If you cannot breathe the air or drink the water, don't sit this one out. You are by accident of fate, alive in this critical moment of history in our planet. So this is our website. So our group is called Thailand CAN or Thailand Clean Air Network. Part of the reason we also chose this name is a double meaning, right? So it's really kind of leveraging off President Obama's political campaign. When he started, his slogan was, yes, we can, right? So this is sort of to instill a sense of optimism and a sense of can do, right? That, it is possible to do that. And this is the QR code for our website. We've got a ton of social media links and you can find it all there. So thank you so much. And I'll end here.
Wow, thank you so much, Weena. I was listening to the whole presentation. It was very insightful. I mean, I see that you're dealing with such a complex and massive issues with these networks. It's really doing every dedicated, activities and very thorough. And it's very happy to see that different people from different layers actually coming in to fight this problems together. Well, thank you, Weena. We're now entering the Q&A session, but since we're still waiting for maybe any one of you want to ask the questions, perhaps maybe I actually had a question in mind, but perhaps Ahim, you want to start with the questions?
Yeah, I have actually one in mind. So first of all, Weena, thank you so much. I still remember when we had the first get to know each other, I think more than 2 years ago, and we were on the phone for more than 2 hours and going through all the problems that Thailand had. And I think it's really fascinating, like all the activities and the holistic approach that you do. And my question is actually, like, is there anything in particular that you feel was standing out from all the effective activities you did that you feel, okay, that was really effective, or maybe even something surprising, that you say if other, let's say, environmental justice organizations around the world, if they kind of at the beginning of their journey, is there something particular that you say, okay, this worked really, really well? This is something I can recommend to other organizations to try out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think early on, so Thailand, in Thailand, PM 2.5 data has been collected for I think around 15 years or so now. But it was never included in our air quality index for about 10 odd years. In short, when you include it in the index, it doesn't look so good. And there was a big movement by other NGOs to try to push the authorities to say, hey, you really should include it. And but it's a usual response, and some has its validity, but maybe not that much. And that is limited budget, not much capacity, da 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 da. 10 years later, da 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 da. Right now, what happened in 2018, 2019, thereabouts? I remember about around that period. People started falling quite sick. And what happened was there was the awareness was already built. People were aware of particulate matter 2.5, and they all started complaining en masse through social media, and they didn't stop. So that complaining actually pushed those in power to say, hey, we've got to include PM 2.5 in our air quality index. And within 9 months of that complaining, that was effective. So I think that goes to show that if you can channel your voice in the right way towards the right direction together, it can be really powerful. So I think that was really one thing. And then for us, I think the other thing is that I was telling you before, Thailand, when we started, you actually had to collect signatures on paper. It was extremely painful. In fact, when I submitted with my team, when we went in and submitted the legislation, I had to print out 22,000 pieces of paper. A lot of trees were killed then. It was really stupid. But what actually did happen towards the end, before, sort of halfway through, for us, was there was a change in legislation for citizens initiating legislation to Parliament, and that was it allowed people to actually sign up online, and that really helped. Unfortunately, the system is not fully developed it. So even though people did submit online, they still required me to print it out, which is very stupid. But didn't submit digitally. But we did see the jump. The jump up. I think we probably were maybe around 3,000. And as soon as that came in, bam, it was like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 20. We hit 20,000 quite quickly. So that was useful. And I think the other thing is that I think collaboration among strategic partners have been absolutely phenomenal, right? So in our case, when we submitted, honestly, we couldn't even get news out that the citizen group had submitted clean air bill, but it was through a friend or a friend or a friend who happens to know someone who happens to work for the French equivalent of BBC, and the journalist called me, and I spoke to her for about maybe 45 minutes on the phone, explained the gist of it. So yeah, the first newspaper to cover what we did is actually a French newspaper. I think that was extremely helpful. The University of Chicago has been a complete sweetheart. We've worked with them and they've helped us think through to try to, how to use data, how to manage data in a way to help, support create the kind of movements that we needed to do. Dr. David Ward's absolutely phenomenal. He's been extremely supportive to the Indonesian group. It's been very supportive to us. Client Earth has been phenomenal. So there are many different groups, and I think with air quality issue, I think that the group is kind of small because, as we all know, globally, funds available in the space is very, very limited, which is really, really stupid. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's only like 2% of global money floating around for climate change is devoted to air quality issues. So it makes it a very difficult fight. But at the end of the day, I do believe that the fact that the fact that we're supporting each other and helping each other out is important. We connect with the Indonesian groups. We've connected with the Chinese group. We've connected with some of the Indian group. And I think working across boundaries to try to find solutions has been extremely, extremely supportive and helpful. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Weena. Joanna, there are a few other questions in the chat, I think.
Yes, so we have a couple questions. First from Bola. The first question, which is similar to Paolo's question, was, are these white, blue, green, and draftable accessible?
Yes, they are. So we've got English translated version of the white. We've got the English translation of the blue paper. It's all online. The green paper, the actual green paper is 800 pages. We don't have the means to actually translate that to English. It's a huge endeavor. But we did translate the public guide, which is a 70-page document. So that's available in English. Yeah. And the legislation itself is actually available in English too. The draft legislation.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers some of the question here. And we still have another question from Bola. The second one is, what worked bring number of organizations together? How did you organize this huge number of organizations, and are all of them active?
Oh, you mean our strategic partners?
Yes, I think it's supposed to be the strategic partners.
Oh, okay. Within our team, we all kind of we've all sort of in our ways kind of sort of split which groups who connects with whom kind of thing a little bit. So for example, one of my co-founders, she would deal with like the labor unions and I forgot, the Human Rights Commission is also another group that we collaborate a lot with as well, the Thai Human Rights Commission. So that's she manages that. A lot of the small businesses came about because we reached out to people. We basically said, hey, we need help. We need clean air stations. Who wants to help us? So actually amazing SMEs or put up their hands. And so that's how we've built that group, and we've maintained communication with them. And then the other strategic partners, it's just through, each of us individually reaching out to them. And of course, not all of them are active all at the same time. And the different stages of when our collaboration may be more intense and less so, depending on certain situations. But no, our partners have been phenomenal. And our partners have actually included a lot of incredible artists. There was one Pacific artist who did this incredible painting, street art. I remember reaching out to him when we did our first event, and I'm like, oh, we need a backdrop, and I would love this amazing painting that you did on the cement. He's like, oh, come over, pick it up. It's incredible. Yeah. So we've had amazing artists, performance artists, and we've got like 2 or 3 influencers. They've just been phenomenal. Every time we reach out to them and said, could you help us get message through? Could you help do this? They've just been phenomenal. Yeah.
Great to know. The last question was, how is the response of the MPs or leader of political parties with this movement?
The more progressive ones are very welcoming. While others who vested interest, I don't think they know how to handle us. I guess because fortunately, some of them don't view citizens who vote them into power as their clientele or as an equal partner. So that's been a bit of a struggle. And we have lobbyists coming in, sitting in as advisors, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that's the lay of the land. And we use data, we use information, we use logic, we use reasoning, whatever it takes, to protect the most critical elements that needs to be in this legislation.
Interesting. Perhaps, okay, we have another question coming from Victor. Perhaps could be our last question, looking at the timing. A very inspiring talk, Weenarin. My question is, given what you know now, what is the one thing that you would like to redo in your journey to have a bigger impact in terms of continuous improvement, if there's any?
Let me think. I guess maybe being a bit more discerning in terms of who we would collaborate with. I guess at the beginning we I don't know. I just, maybe I'm too simple-minded. I believe most people want to breathe clean air. I believe people want to be alive. I believe they want it for themselves or their kids. So I had presumed, with logic, with reasoning, I'm an economist. So when I speak to these business people, I'm trying to explain to them on a business angle why this makes sense, right? Whether it's a branding perspective, whether it's actually, hey, your employees are going to actually die too soon, and maybe yourself. So, if you're a factory owner, you're like, hey, my cost is going up. Yep, but have you thought about how much it will cost when you're dying too early? So it's I'm an economist for goodness sake, right? So I reason with people, and but there's a level in which rationale and reasoning doesn't seem to resonate. So being a bit more discerning with those who will never get it because this isn't real to them yet. Yeah, and I think maybe not wasting time and being more discerning about who to exert efforts on and who to say, hey, this is a lost cause approach and let's just drop this, I guess.
Interesting. So before we close this, can you share like one closing statement to all of us to end this forum?
Yeah, no, I guess everybody who's here is working in the same space. I want to say that it is a difficult space to work in. On tough days, I said, hey, if I don't need to breathe, my family doesn't need to breathe. I wouldn't care about this, to be honest, right? Because but if there's an alternative to not breathing and being still remaining alive and be well, but there isn't, right? And I think this is a difficult journey, but at the end of the day, I think the impact is massive. And so, yeah, just say that if you're working in the space, you're actually not alone. It is not a huge community, but I think it's a pretty mighty and forceful community and supportive. Yeah. So I just kind of want to end that note.
Thank you so much. I think everyone, we can have like virtual round of applause for Weena today. Thank you so much, Weena, for your amazing presentation. And also thank you so much for each and every one of you who've been joining today. We'll be sharing the presentation and recording of the session in our website. So stay tuned. It will probably be uploaded by next week latest. So thank you so much and see you on our next Quality Forum. Bye.